Donovan, owner of Piper Strategy, asks, what are the top tips for closing the sale?
I think we haven't talked about sales process.
That's a whole other hour in itself, isn't it?
Oh, it's a day and a half.
And some.
But there's a video on this. I think the tip is to pay attention and know where you are, and to pay attention and know where your buyer is. And so if you have just started in the process and don't really know what's going on and they're ready to close, it's sometimes called bluebirds. Has anybody ever heard that expression, bluebird? One of the best lines I ever heard is, bluebirds are just buzzards in drag. You know, you
write that one down. That's brilliant.
Here's this deal, you know, here, take it. It's there for the taking, and they do. And then you get into it and it turns out there are all these other conditions or circumstances that weren't uncovered because you jumped too quickly. The opposite end of the spectrum is called snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, where they've given you buying signals, you've covered the bases, you've done all this, and you just keep talking and talking. Okay, so where are we in the process? And to answer that, you need to know what's the process. And if you haven't mapped it out, then you're like a little kid sitting in the back seat of the car. You know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? I mean, all you know is we're on our way. We've been going for a while, but we haven't closed. So
may I ask the group if you have you put your hand up if you have a clear sales process, if you have that mapped out?
Okay, great. Do you have the buying process mapped out to go with it?
Absolutely. And the key to it, I'll give you an analogy, is a corridor with a whole bunch of open doors. Identify what those open doors are with both parties, and then as you go down the corridor, you close them until you get to the end of the corridor where you can open that door, sign the deal, close it.
Yeah, nice. I've something similar had drawn the funnel, and there are sellers' actions and there are buyers' actions. And what's interesting is you as a seller can do everything by yourself except sign the deal. And there are buyers who are happy to watch you do it. And so the question when you look at it, and this is why it's important to map the buyer's actions, is what is the buyer doing to advance the sale? And we have a video on this called What Are the Right Things to Measure? And what is different today, and I think I talked about this in the video, in the 90s, I did sales process mapping. And we'd start with, you know, like the simplest process I ever heard was identify, qualify, propose, close. So that would be a 4-step process. And whatever 1 through n number of steps you have, we would always invite clients to look at n+1, what does successful implementation or delivery look like? And n+2, what does ongoing customer care look like? Okay, so whatever your sales cycle or your sales process steps are, consider n+1 and n+2. And then companies that had bothered to do that would say, and here's what we do at each of these steps. And the big aha when we were doing process mapping was when we said, okay, great, got that. Now, what does the buyer do at each of these steps? They identify, you know, who other buying influences are, what the budget is, what their decision-making process is, what history they've had in the past that didn't work, and that's why we're doing this again, and so on. That's all useful stuff. When does it come in? And that's what we did in the 90s, okay, sales process mapping. Well, guess what? Everybody's heard of the internet. Everybody's heard of the shift in power from sellers to buyers. So we were doing inside out. We started with what we were doing, and then what did they need to do? Now, the current thinking is start with outside in, look at the buying process first, and then aligning your sales actions to that. Another book along those lines, I thought I had it right here on the shelf. Here it is. Yeah, by my good friend Martin Lewis, another Brit, by the way. How Customers Buy and Why They Don't.
Yeah.
And this is all about mapping the buying process, interviewing customers, and so on. The single biggest takeaway from this book for me, and it's good. It's a good read. I told Martin I felt like it took a while to get there, but there's a point in here. There's a graph where he shows where the energy is. So Hugh, in terms of walking down the hallway, closing the doors, there are a number of doors, and mostly the seller is closing them, and it takes whatever, a little bit of effort on the buyer's part. Okay, yeah, you answered my question. I'll close that door. I'll close that door. But when you open that last door at the end of the hallway, and now they're buying it and they have to implement it, there are a whole bunch of doors after that on the buyer's side. And mostly we're not there. And so staying in touch with them and having a handoff to customer service or customer support or implementation. So there's all this energy that we as sellers put in till it closes, not recognizing that the buyer's doing their work. But once it's closed, then they have all this work to do in terms of implementation. And they're often looking at that. They're often haunted by that. And that's why so many deals can go through the entire process and end in no decision, because they haven't taken care or really addressed getting the buy-in that comes post-sale. So I think that's a great analogy or great metaphor with the doors in the hallway. Just remember, there's something after you walk through that last door.
Yeah.
I would agree with that entirely, but that's another kind of sales. That's down then to the account managers to build and continue to build those relationships and deliver off the back of that.
Absolutely.
And if your business doesn't have that, then you're always going to be a loser.
Well, so one of the acronyms we came up with, people always talk about customer care. We think CARE is an acronym: customer acquisition, retention, and expansion. Land and expand, right?
Yeah.
And it should be a closed loop system where sales is a customer of marketing, service and support is a customer of sales, and marketing is a customer of service and support.
But you see, Barry, I hanker back to the days when sales and marketing were one team.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we're back to those days.
I do. It's the convergence of the both. Guys, I'm going to have to wrap this up now. We've super gone over time, but that was very, very interesting. And you